Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin, founder of Eskin Fundraising Training, and it's my privilege to welcome you to the first Fall 2025 live fundraising friendship fund broadcast. That is our first ever simulcast. We are expanding our audience by doing this in conjunction with Delta Tau Delta Fraternity, which is giving us our esteemed guest of honor today. Let me tell you a couple of things. And we have nonprofit leaders, and we have alumni and students of Marjorie Hope. I haven't seen you yet. We'll bring her in conversation. She's a pretty renowned author. The highest priority here is audience engagement, and you can do that three ways. Anytime we want to hear from you. Bernie knows I think I prepared a gazillion questions, but we want to hear your questions, okay? And you can indicate your questions. You can type it into the chat box. You can type it into the Q&A, or you can raise your hand and we'll give you audio and video privileges, which we prefer, and you can come on the screen. First of all, for our nonprofit audience, and not to say any of us are biased, a little background on Delta Tau Delta. It has 130 chapters around the country, 10,000 undergraduates, and about 170,000 lifetime members, though some of us have a different color hair. Meryl Kirschenbaum, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Meryl, what's the best fraternity on the planet?
DTD, of course.
That's of course. Okay. Well, I'm very proud to be connected in two profound ways to our subject matter expert. We both attended and graduated in George Washington University, and we're both proud members of Delta Tau Delta Fraternity. And this occurred, as you can see by the color of our hair, a little earlier in our lives. I wish I could say there were more similarities in our careers, but it stops there. I am in absolute awe of what Bernie has accomplished over the last several decades. And he hasn't done it alone. I like to bring in our fact checker and his partner in crime and life and in business, Paula, his wife. Paula, who I just discovered is from the Boston area. Paula and Bernie are coming to us in my favorite spot on the planet, Nantucket, Massachusetts. The cosmetic icon, Elizabeth Arden, said, "I only want to be around people who do the impossible. I only want to be around people who do the impossible." And I think that's a pretty fair assessment of our speaker's life and accomplishments. In building the largest lecture agency on the planet, literally from a stationery closet, he has lived the impossible. And it wasn't easy. It took a fierce work ethic, a Churchillian resolve to never give up, and a relentless commitment to process improvement and growth. And also he has intimate insight into the impossible achieved by so many other distinguished world leaders who became clients and friends of his through the Washington Speakers Bureau, and then he profiled them in his best-selling book. I don't like to waste time in long introductions, so right at the outset, Bernie, I would like you to take a couple of minutes, if this and encapsulate your journey from high school to building the largest lecture agency on the planet.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation to share a few of our thoughts. To be honest, when you compare our story to the fraternity brothers or those that we attend college with, it's a story that pales in comparison. The Delta that I was with in the 1960s became well-known surgeons, prominent attorneys, financiers, ministers, actors in movies like Star Wars, and one fraternity brother designed the first wearable heart monitor and developed communication system for the spacecraft Voyager 1 and 2. So To be honest, our story pales in comparison, but it is an example, and hopefully, it'll give a good opportunity for some people to think about their lives and do a little soul searching. So I'd like to give a brief outline quickly about the path we took. Uh, First of all, I attended GW for 4 years in the middle of the 1960s. I then became the football coach and the ninth grade PE teacher at a junior high school I attended a few years earlier. I then returned to GW on a 2-year fellowship to get my master's. With GW about to build his first field house, the Smith Center, I took a job as the intramural director for $5,000 a year just to be in the right place at the right time to be considered for a job that I wanted as assistant athletic director. After nearly 5 years as the assistant athletic director at GW, the athletic director announced his retirement, and I was in a good position to replace him. It was at that time Paula read an article in Fortune magazine about the largest lecture agency in the world, in which the owner, in response to one of the Henry Kissinger, who he was trying to recruit, questioning whether he wanted to go with the agency who had a very high commission, says, maybe I'll go with somebody else. And this agency had said, I have no competition. Intrigued, we both eventually quit our jobs, Paula first and then me. We had no money saved. We had a 1-year-old baby. We borrowed $25,000 at 15% interest rate to live on. And we just soon discovered in a no internet world that there were more than a dozen large agencies just like his. We started in a stationery closet of friends, Bill Collins and Chuck Hagel. It was all we could afford, and we had no idea where to find speakers and who booked those speakers. We didn't represent our first speaker for a full year. 8 years after we started, Ronald Reagan stunned the lecture industry and us by selecting us to represent him. We went on to represent 3 United States presidents, 5 secretaries of state, 7 prime ministers of Great Britain, and just about anybody in the 1990s and early 2000s who was worldwide and famous. So this is a brief.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Paula, I'm going to bring you in. When Ronald Reagan chose you to be his lecture agency, I want to know how you celebrated that night.
We actually did not celebrate that night.
That wasn't big enough, right?
We took it as a big responsibility. Bernie did not immediately wanted to hit the ground running. They started getting some engagements for him. It was a job and we couldn't fail at it. So yeah. You couldn't celebrate until later.
Okay. I know. Okay. Delta Tau Delta, as Bernie pointed out, is full of a lot of overachievers. And one that several of us remember and fondly, Bill Collins was a gifted athlete. And then dabbled in politics and lobbying, and then became an immensely successful telecommunications executive. Bill, can you share some memories? And then we're going to go to a Q&A with Bernie. But can you share some of your memories of a young Bernie Swain?
Certainly. Thank you, Jim.
Be careful, Bill.
I know. It's great to see Bernie and Paula. And I love that you have that tan, because that's important. I had the opportunity to really watch Bernie, Paula, and their other partner, Harry Rhoads, as they literally started off this business. And we were always excited because, we knew that Bernie was the guy who put everything he had into achieving success, no matter what it was. And Paula was obviously the person who stood by him and with him in developing this business. And in the initial days, Paula and Harry were the two that worked there because Bernie was finishing up his role at GW in athletics. Jim, I was a little concerned when you made that opening statement that Bernie and Paula and Harry's first office was in a supply room.
Yeah.
In our offices, it was really a palatial penthouse suite. Now,
I'm glad we've broken the myth. Thank you, Bill.
I know it. I just wanted to set you straight on that. But no, we saw them every single day as they strived, mightily to get that first client. And that was a fellow that probably nobody on the call except us guys that are over 70 remember. And that's Steve Bell. And that was a
By the way,
new.
guys, is he still alive, Bernie?
No, he isn't.
No.
Aren't you glad he asked GW for a pool and not Georgetown?
I am.
And the part about that was he's starting up the new show, Good Morning America.
Yeah.
And, it really went from there. And then it seemed like Bernie and Paula got every single other personality that was in the Washington area in the radio and television arena. And then obviously they certainly were successful in utilizing those folks to introduce them to folks on the political side.
Yeah.
And, they also went from, Bernie mentioned all of the presidents and prime ministers that they have represented. In the sports arena, they had just incredible success with, guys like Valvano, Coach K, Magic Johnson, Jill Ellis, Lou Holtz. I mean, they just clicked them off, all the really outstanding speakers, and some of them are still, involved in broadcasts. They also were incredibly successful with military leaders. And, Schwarzkopf, McRaven, Condoleezza Rice, Powell, Madeleine Albright. I probably, can't even remember all of their significant ones. But, from that side of the business, they just built it into a significant corporate entity. And the one thing you'll hear from all of their speakers is that Bernie, Paula, and Harry believe strongly in customer service. They literally wrote the book on what they did.
Well, they certainly have had, their customers have been the most important world leaders. Bernie, are you ready for our Q&A? And let me prompt the audience at any time. If you have a question or a comment, again, you can use the chat space, you can use the Q&A box, you can raise your hand and we'll put you on camera. If you need clarification, Paula is going to serve as a fact checker. And Bernie, okay, we'll start with our Q&A.
Great.
First question, you talked about, you had a dream. You wanted to become a collegiate athletic director, and you were on the fast track at George Washington to get there. I think you were in your mid-30s and you were assistant director just to become, the head director. And then all of a sudden, call it madness or whatever, you made this bold decision to start a National Speakers Bureau. So what in the world convinced you to make such a bold and courageous decision about your life while you're raising a young family?
Well, it's true. I was devoted to become, to have a career in athletics one way or the other. And I stuck around earning $5,000 for a full year just to be in the right place to get selected. Now, because I knew the Smith Center was a brand new building and was a blank page for me. Uh, GW basketball used to be on an army base off campus, and you would have to be bused off campus, and more than 400 or 500 students a game used to attend, and only a few hundred alumni.
Didn't we
Now,
call it the Tin Tabernacle?
I turned it off.
no,
No.
that was just a place to warm up. This was an army base
The
off
fan.
campus.
Yeah, it was obviously Fort
I'm
Myers.
just saying the cabbage
Right.
is
And
animal free.
Okay, I kind of have an
Have
okay
you had any of those?
Yeah, they're good, but I just want eggs.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, Bernie.
no, that's okay. So I was now in charge of taking a building and filling it with 5,000 fans, not just for one game, but consistently throughout the season for a program that had never gotten more than 700 or 800 people attending a game ever. Even the students who lived on campus weren't interested in GW athletics. So to generate interest, I had to come up with some ideas. And so one of those ideas, I had to build interest not only with the students, but the entire metropolitan area.
Yeah.
The big screens that you see today in arenas did not exist back then, but I got American Airlines to give us $100,000 to purchase a computer science system so I could generate corporate support and advertising during the basketball games. I then took that sign and traded advertising with a dozen companies, including the Washington Post, who gave us a quarter-page ad for every game.
Wow.
I got McDonald's to give thousands of dollars for a halftime shootout. I got the first GW radio station and sold ads to keep it on the air. So why did I leave as an assistant athletic director? Right in my fourth year, 4.5 years in, the athletic director announced he was retiring within 2 years. And I was in a perfect position to take over his job. So the question is, why did I give up a job, a career that I'd wanted all my life, just to take a challenge and start a career which I would not make any salary whatsoever and risk my family in doing so? What I discovered at that moment, which I think all of us discover at some point in their life, is that there's a turning point, a moment when we discover what we really want out of life. And what I wanted out of life was something I thought about when I was a child, that I could never imagine working for somebody else. I loved what I was doing at GW, and I wanted to devote my time to having a career in athletics. But I soon discovered after working at GW and coming up with all these different ideas that at some point I was not going to enjoy working for somebody else. So at the same time, Paula read an article in Fortune magazine in which she discovered it was talking about a lecture agency, the largest in the world. And in the article, the owner of the magazine says, we have no competition. And so Paula thought this is a great opportunity for us. So she was the one who convinced me to walk away from GW and start a new life together, assuming that if we could do it, we could do it together.
Paula, let's bring you in. What was in your gut to make this bold, courageous decision?
I could see that Bernie was really frustrated with the bureaucracy of GW, that he was never going to be able, and Bill is shaking his head. Yes, it's true. There was so much bureaucracy. He would have a good idea and it would take, the first answer would be, no, we can't do that. I don't even see how you could do that. And I knew he was getting more frustrated and I knew it wasn't going to change. So when this opportunity came up to start a business, I just thought that it's something we should try. So.
Yeah, and there's
I think it was an open agency, and I think it's something like 14 months before you had any business revenue coming in. What kept you going during those 14 months?
Desperation. Right? Bill was starting his business too. You had a family to support. Bernie, I knew that Bernie would not fail. I knew that Bernie would make this work. So I really wasn't scared, but we knew I knew Bernie would make it work.
I
When you
have to
find-
ask this. I
when
think
you find
most
something-
couples.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bernie.
No, I was just going to say, when you find something in life that you really want to do, especially when you're working for yourself, when the only person you have to account to is yourself. So if it's not like you can take off the afternoon and play golf because you're the one you have to answer to. And so passion overcomes and erases anxiety. I woke up every morning with confidence that never wavered. Beating that number one agency, we were nothing. I mean, people had no idea who we were. And there were now 12 agencies where when we started, when I quit my job, we thought there was one agency we would compete with and he had no competition. But there was no internet at the time, so there was no way for us to know whether he was telling the truth or not. And there was no way for us to learn the industry because having no internet, there was nothing you could look up. You couldn't look in the encyclopedia. There was nothing in the newspapers about this agency, this industry. So our goal from the beginning was to beat this number one agency. There was never a doubt in our minds that was going to take place. There might have been 12 agencies that we were going to compete with, but those 12 agencies were nothing to us. The only issue we had was to get to number one, and that's every day we woke up with that goal in mind.
Bernie, Bill mentioned, I think was your first client was Steve Bell of ABC's Good Morning America.
Right.
Yeah, you were famous for doing business on a handshake. I don't think the lawyers like that, but you would do business on a handshake.
The whole thing
How many
started by
times did you get caught on the short stick because you were just doing it on a handshake?
I never got caught on a short stick. It was the most amazing thing. Working on a handshake with well-known people. Thinking of being an agency in California where you're representing actors and actresses, and you want to do it on a handshake. The chance of keeping those people and doing a good job for them is almost impossible. So the whole thing started on a handshake. As Bill said, I let Steve Bell use the swimming pool when I was at GW for a story. So we couldn't get any speakers to answer us. We couldn't get any speakers to allow us to represent them because there were 12 other competitors, all of which had a better reputation than we did. So Steve ended his relationship with another agency, happened to be that number one agency, and remembered that I had gone from GW to starting this agency and called me on the phone. So we were so excited. I went over to ABC and I sat down with Steve, and Steve agreed to allow us to represent him. I was so excited for representing our first speaker after a year that I shook his hand and walked back. When I got back to the closet, I told everybody what I had done, that I shook his hand, and nobody said, "Well, are you signing him to a contract?" And I said, "Well, I didn't mention a contract, and it's too late for me to bring it up." I gave him my word, and that struck a chord at that moment where I said, you know what, if people don't like what we're doing for them, they can walk away, because what good is a piece of paper going to do holding them together? All it's going to hurt is our reputation to fight over some contract. So we ended up representing every single speaker we represented, well over 200 to 300 people, all on a handshake. I never lost a speaker all the time I ran the company. And it was the most amazing thing, because what it did was once we started getting employees, people working for us, it said to them, don't make a mistake, because that speaker can walk away if we don't do a good job. So the handshake did almost everything, because what it did was it said everybody in our company had to do a good job, because if we don't do a good job, if we make a mistake, they could easily walk away. In return, the speakers saw that we were doing a good job for them, and they worked harder for us than they did for other agencies. which enhanced our reputation over the long term.
Bill Collins described it as a penthouse suite, but I think I read it was more like a stationary closet
Yes.
with 2 phones and 2 desks. By the way, Paula, how did you decorate that office?
So it was next to Bill's business partner was Chuck Hagel. And in order
The
to
future Secretary of Defense, right?
exactly. And so the deal was for us to be able to rent this space. It had a window, at least one window.
Oh, yeah,
And
a
the
window.
deal was for us to rent this space, we could rent it, but we could not leave if Chuck had a meeting.
Yeah.
So we were, because you had to walk through Chuck's office to be able to get out to the main. So that's how, when Bernie quit his job, I moved out I got some freedom. I moved out into the lobby area, and Bernie and Harry, our partner Harry, were back in there, but they couldn't leave either. So it was not exactly spacious, but we were grateful because it was an office and we could afford the rent.
We couldn't enter the closet until Chuck's meetings were over, sometimes lasting an hour. So you'd stand outside his office because we couldn't get back to work into the closet. If we ever wanted to leave or go to lunch and Chuck was having a lunch meeting, we couldn't walk out of the closet and go anywhere.
Oh my gosh. Hey,
Well,
Jim.
Tell us, you couldn't have started any smaller, but you get more clients. Can you talk about growing pains? How did you master all the management, organizational, marketing, hiring, all those business disciplines, starting from a 3-person in a closet to a huge organization? How did you master all those growing pains?
Paula and I had a good friend, Alex Haley, who wrote the best-selling book Roots.
Ah,
And Alex used to come into the office all the time when we had our big office building. We bought an office building, and he used to come in and he used to say to us, when an old person dies, it's like a library burning. And so what that meant was that all of us are full of experiences and memories that are much like a library filled to the brim. So what I learned at GW by taking a building and a program that had to be totally rebuilt was, when I came up with all those ideas and got the airlines to give us $100,000, and I did the shootouts and the programs like that. It taught me that if you use your imagination, if you can take something and turn it upside down, then you have a better chance of succeeding than if you just follow certain patterns. So the biggest challenge for us was establishing a name for ourselves. Even with Steve Bell, nobody wanted to answer our telephone calls. We couldn't get somebody on the phone. We couldn't get them to ever let them come to see us. So we're sitting in the office one day and we said, if they can't come to see us, then let's bring them if we can't go to see them, let's bring them to see us. So we came up with a program where we called a hotel in Roslyn and asked them, if we bring a lot of meeting planners to your building, can we use your ballroom? And the guy said, allowed us to do it. Then we asked Steve Bell, we said, Steve, would you give a free speech if we brought a lot of meeting planners in front of you so they could, see you for the first time, because we need exposure and you need exposure. So then we sent out invitations to everybody we could think of, everybody we'd ever heard of that was a meeting planner, and invited them to see Steve Bell free. And we got about 150, 200 RSVPs. About a half an hour before the meeting, the parking lot was so full that we had to start putting more chairs down. We had 400 to 500 meeting planners at this meeting. I got up with Paula and I got up holding our son to show people we desperately need work because we have a family. We introduced ourselves, said a few jokes, trying to get people to see what we were like, to see us in person, to know if we called them on the phone, they put a face to a voice. Steve got up, gave a great speech. We had 2 or 3 meeting planners on site that booked Steve Bell for an event. And after that, we were off and running.
Wow. Well, listen, Bernie, before we're going to bring in the undergraduates to hear about Delta Tau Delta Gamma Eta in the year 2025. But before we do that, can you take a moment to kind of summarize how the Delta Tau Delta experience prepared you for the challenges and opportunities during your life?
Well, I think as I think he will say to you that every Delt year, every Delt chapter is different, and every Delt 4 years, every Delt group takes on a different character. Our house was the jock house. Back then,
Yeah.
everybody got typecast. I mean, the fraternities were typecast. They were the smart, good-looking kids. They were the jocks, which is what we were. Where nobody, a lot of the girls didn't even want to come to the fraternity house because of our reputation. And so, but what I saw every day, which bared out, and when I was talking earlier about how well our fraternity brothers have done over the years, what you found out, this was far from reality. I was living with and communicating with 40, 50, 60 smart, strong-willed, opinionated brothers, all from diverse backgrounds and experiences. And this prepared me more than any other experience to deal with all the different kinds of people that we ended up representing.
I'll tell you what, on that note, let's hear about a couple of minutes. Henry Naughton is the current undergraduate president of Gamma Eta, and he has some of his fellow brothers. Henry, can you give us a couple of minutes and tell us how the Delt chapter at GW is doing today?
Yeah, Jim, of course. And I've had the pleasure of talking to you over the past 2 weeks and getting to know you a little bit more. I mean, this whole webinar has been great, but I only wish I heard some of this sooner. We're all here today hearing about all of these things, and I'm going to be honest, we didn't know about some of you guys at all. So this is one of the more informative experiences that I've had here with Gamma Eta, and me and some of my board are here behind me. A lot of our other guys are joining in groups, so we're all here. We're all super happy to be here for this event, and yeah, I'd love to talk about Gamma Eta today. So to start off, like I said, we're sitting around 61 guys right now. We're expecting that number to go up with a exciting freshman rush. And the great thing about Gamma Eta is you guys have talked about a little bit how each 4 years has a flavor, or every 4 years has a certain type. I would go out to say that our 4 years of Gamma Eta doesn't specifically have a type. We're from all over the U.S. We've got guys who are from all over the southern U.S., the Midwest, guys from California, guys from New York, guys from the Mid-Atlantic. So we're from all over, which is great. And we've got different majors. We've got international business. We've got engineering. We've got international affairs, which is probably overrepresented here at GW. And we've got leadership across campus. So we've got people who are leaders in their sports organizations, leaders in sailing, leaders in rowing. We have a president of the professional business fraternity, AK Psi, with us as well, Pritesh Tana. So Delt spans across campus. We have members who are on the GW water polo team. We have members who are on all sorts of professional and sports initiative all across GW. And we've really taken that home when we've shaped Gamma Eta for this past semester and change, is we've expanded ourselves in doing new initiatives with new student organizations that we typically haven't in the past. And I know I spoke with you on the phone, but last semester, actually one of the Divine Nine sororities reached out to us for some of their philanthropy and some of their events, and we were happy to. We didn't really expect it, to be totally honest, but it was awesome. We connected with them. We went to a bunch of their events. We've connected with the GW basketball coach who has invited us out to a bunch of their events. We'd love to do a fraternity tailgate with him. That's sort of the white whale that we're chasing here. You know, he's a little cagey to get to, but we'd love that. And yeah, overall, we're really excited. We're really active. And yeah, that's kind of my introduction. I've got some other members of the board here if you'd like them to introduce
Yeah, I'll tell
themselves.
you what, we'll do this quickly. Can the other members of the board give your name, your class year, your major, and where you're from? And let's try to get in.
We'll do a round robin here.
Hey, I'm a junior. I'm Brendan Avino. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a business major.
I'm Miles Moorfield. I'm the vice president. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a political science major.
My name is Easton Cromer. I'm the director of standards. I'm originally from the Ozarks in southern Missouri, and I study political science, Russian, and statistics.
Hi there. My name is Sam Safar. I'm a junior from the suburb of Chicago. I am studying economics, and I'm the ritual chair for this board.
Very good.
Alrighty. Well, there's a little bit of a taste of Gamma Eta there for you.
Yeah. Henry, we have a lot of confidence. This makes, I don't like to call us old timers, are more seasoned. And by the way, Merrill, how would you describe our class as smart and good looking? I think that was a good fit. Were we the smart and good looking guys?
Well, some of them were very smart, not including me. And
I don't
I'm
know who was good
I'm not sure
looking.
about good looking, but smart. They did well.
Yeah. Okay, hey, Bernie, I wanted to ask you this question. Your breakthrough moment after Steve Bell was, I guess, was it a handshake or signing former President Ronald Reagan, who is known as the great communicator and maybe the greatest political speaker of our time? Do you have any favorite memories about working with former President Reagan?
As I've probably said before, we started in 1981. By 1988, when we were going to, when Ronald Reagan was going to leave, we were representing about 20 or 25, mostly, as Bill alluded to, mostly Washington journalists like George Will or,
Yeah.
Different people like that. And our reputation was big in Washington. There were no other speakers bureaus in Washington, but we needed to expand and grow. And so we wiggled our way. Ronald Reagan was his staff was going to interview different agencies, and they probably sent out invitations to about half a dozen to 8 or 9 different agencies, including some Hollywood agencies, because Ronald Reagan used to be an actor in Hollywood. So we were one of those that interviewed, and they said to us, "You never met Ronald Reagan at the time." The staff, the chief of staff, who ended up being the publisher of the Washington Post, interviewed you, and they said at the interview, we're probably going to invite back the top leaders for a second meeting. So we finished the interview, and for several weeks passed, and we didn't hear anything. And then a month passed, and we didn't hear anything. And finally, they announced that there would be no second meetings. So we kind of assumed that we were out of the running, and it was a gamble anyway. I mean, because we've been in business for only about 7 years. We had about 7 or 8 employees at that time, and that's all we had. The other agencies were far bigger reputations. Harry Walker had signed this is the number one agency that we were competing, trying to overcome. He had signed Gerald Ford, so Ford knew Reagan, and we figured that, and he represented Henry Kissinger, and we figured Kissinger and Alexander Haig, who was represented by him, are gonna put in a recommendation. We really had nobody to recommend us. So 2 months passed, and we figured we didn't hear anything. Usually Washington's kind of a gossipy town, but in retrospect, nobody knew anything, and we figured, well, Reagan has told whoever it is, you're going to represent him, but I don't want to start speaking, so keep your mouth shut, don't say anything. So 2 months passes, I get a phone call from the chief of staff, and I sat there and I said, I said in the office, I said, well, this is it. They're probably going to tell us that, thank us for coming. These are the phone calls they're making to all the different agencies to tell them that sorry, but somebody else got it. So I picked up the phone, and first thing he said to me, Bernie, Ronald Reagan and Mrs. Reagan selected you to represent them. And I was so flustered that I had no idea what to say. I thanked him, promised I would do a good job for him, and hung up the telephone. So it was such an amazing thing that we couldn't figure out why Ronald Reagan chose us. So I'm sitting in the office months later, and the chief of staff is in the office, and I finally got nerve enough. I didn't want to ask him how it happened because I was afraid that it was a mistake, and that if I pressed it too hard, they'd realize, oh my God, we told the wrong person. So I finally got my nerve up. I said, how did we end up getting it? And he says, well, actually, you were the second choice. And my face, you know how your face gets red and you kind of you don't know what to say? I say, oh, it was a mistake. And so he says, Harry Walker, which was that #1 agency, came in first. You came in second. But Ronald Reagan looked at who you were, and he decided that you guys were young entrepreneurs, and he wanted to give you guys a chance. Now, that told me more about Ronald Reagan than anything Ronald Reagan could have ever done in his life. That easily he could have gone with the #1 agency in the country, and because it wouldn't have made any difference, nobody would have been criticized him. But instead of that, he stuck by his principles and ideals and gave us a chance. That's what gave us a big break. A month, about 7 or 8 months later, Margaret Thatcher stepped down as prime minister. And it was on a Thanksgiving day, and we were trying to figure out how we're going to reach her. It's Thanksgiving. We don't want to bother people, if they're with their families. So we're fuddling around trying to do it. The next day, I get a phone call from Ronald Reagan's office to say Ronald Reagan spoke to her yesterday, and she wants you to represent them. It was that simple. After that, everything fell in line. I mean,
Hey, Bernie, it's pretty smart strategy to have a president of the United States as your booking agent.
Well, and all of this was because of the reputation we built. I am sure people stood up, and even if we didn't have big names suggesting us or recommending us to him, they were enthusiastic names because it all went back to shaking hands with somebody and living up to what they hope you will do for them.
Yeah.
Paula, you might want to say something.
No,
Hey, Paula, let me get in. Paula and Bernie, do you have any special memories of working with President Reagan? What was the man like? Did you get to interact with him personally?
Oh, we did all the time. I mean,
And what was he like? What surprised us?
Nothing. I don't think anything would surprise you. I think what you saw was what you got. He was that person he was a gentleman. He was thoughtful in his responses, and what you saw on television is what you got. But
and he cared about us the whole time. He didn't have to care about us. I mean, he was always calling somebody on our behalf, and he was doing it on his own without us asking for him to do it. It was the kind of a character that he was, and the amazing thing is that all of these people are famous and well known, and you would think, there's people in this group must have been difficult to work with. It must have had their heads full, and difficult to work with, and it was absolutely total opposite. It made our life easy and allowed our life to what we started and wanted to try to build. Who they were allowed us to continue to do that.
Yeah. Hey, Bernie, we loved your book, okay, in which you profiled 34 of your clients who became friends. And the book is titled, a best-selling book, What Made Me Who I Am. and you really like the word turning point. What was the common denominator? These are 34 of the most accomplished people in the world. Were there any common denominators when they explained their turning points to you?
Well, if I go back a little bit, when I was at GW, the turning point you find in your life is something you don't expect often. I mean, who would have thought? I remember thinking as a child, gee, I could see my father working for somebody and he didn't enjoy working for somebody. And I said, I never want to do that. And then you kind of forget about it and think about, well, that was just a childish thought. It turns out to be there's something inside of you which gives you a passion for doing something. I hear the fraternity brothers there talking about, I'm majoring in this and I'm majoring in that. You know, along the way, you'll find something that there's going to be a turning point, a moment in your life when you say, you know, I want to do this, and turn it around the other way. Think about when you get older. If I didn't want to ever look back and say, if only I had, if I only had made this decision, if only I had taken this path in life. And that is what the speakers in this book, they all discovered their turning point, which was what they wanted to do in life. For example, Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward's a famous. I think we're going to do a question in a few minutes, so I'll stick to that. But I will say that the turning point is not just a realization that, wow, this is exciting, I want to do this. It's a realization of who you are and what you're made up for, and where you're going to find the passion to do something. And that's all we can do. You think you're going to be a great lawyer now. You think you're going to be even a doctor right now, and you get to a point where you say, you know, I just don't have the passion for it. And you look back and you say, this opportunity, I should have taken this opportunity, and you didn't. And the key to all the people that are in the book is they recognize those opportunities when they came along.
Bernie, we're amazed by your energy level. Did we understand you're working on a new book, and can you tell us about it?
Well, I am. I'm stuck. I'm writing a story about all of this, about entrepreneurship and what it takes to work. Bill knows this as much as anybody. Bill Collins, the fact that he's been an entrepreneur all of his life, worked for himself all of his life, made everything that he's ever accomplished, he's done on his own. And for me, being an entrepreneur is everything, because I'm going to succeed or fail on my own ideas. And then if I fail at something, I don't have to explain to somebody else why I failed.
Yeah.
And I can try something new. I mean, part of running the company, we would always turn something upside down. We would decide, well, we're going to do this way. This is going to be a really good thing. And after 4 or 5 months or a year, you find that really good thing is not so good anymore, unless you're willing to turn something upside down. And when you work for somebody else, this is my personal opinion. When you work for somebody else, it's so hard to get somebody else to change when you want to change. Yeah. And everybody says, oh yeah, I'm in favor of change, but nobody practices change. They don't want to go along with it. And so, ask me, I wanted you to ask me a question too about some of the speakers and what was some of the turning points, because it might help explain their turning points, and if I'm not explaining.
Let's take the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher. What was her turning point?
Well, I think Margaret Thatcher, her father was ran a grocery store.
Yeah.
And it was a tiny little grocery store where he was an entrepreneur, had to do things on his own. And he was always getting discouraged because of government regulations. and having a difficult time because the government gave him a hard time. And Margaret Thatcher says, I'm not going to allow that to happen for anybody else. It's as simple as that. I'm going to find a way for that not to happen. And her path just led in politics that way. So she was able to, and that's where she got all of her opinions, all of her conservative opinions. Everything came from her father and his difficult time that he had with government. And Condoleezza Rice, who used to be Secretary of State, her path in life was set by a set of books her grandfather bought when her family could not afford those books. They were sharecroppers. And it was a choice of either buying those books or feeding the family. And he bought those books with all the money they had left because he thought education was as good as any food you could buy.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be really Condoleezza's mantra in her entire life. Bob Woodward, the investigative journalist, famous writing the books. His father was a lawyer and he was a janitor in his father's office. He was working on a Saturday cleaning the place and he happened to see a file on his father's desk and he opened it up and looked at it and realized that there were things in that folder about the community that his father was trying to take care of that nobody knew anything about. They were all secrets that his father was trying to take care of. And that's when he decided he was going to be an investigative journalist.
We have about 10 minutes left. I'd like to open up to the audience. Does anybody, let me pick on the millennial side of my brain. Randall Luna as a millennial. Ayamaya Randa, she holds down a full-time job. She's a consultant. She's a single mother of one. She's pursuing her PhD. And I don't know what she does in her spare time because she doesn't have any spare time. Any questions?
No, I've been enjoying the ride though. This is a heck of a story. Bernie and Paula, kudos. I mean, hearing your journey from start to finish, especially the part where you said you had this perfect opportunity set up for you. But Paula, thank God you were there to see what was really happening, right? And look into that and go, yeah, we could do this differently, right? I think that's incredible.
You cannot do this. I mean, I sit here and I'm dominating the conversation, but Paula and I, when we first started, Paula did this by herself. And I used to wake up, I used to get up every morning when I was still at GW and she was working out of Harry's house and we were trying to get this started. And I said, well, are you doing this? Are you doing that? We would take this home with us at nighttime and talk about it. We wake up in the morning and we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
If we woke up in the middle of the night, this was what we were thinking about. There was no downtime. There was no, I mean, we had no choice. It was succeed or fail.
Yeah.
Hey, Henry, do you or any of the current undergraduates have some questions for this Mr. and Mrs. Swain?
Yeah, actually, we do. We're gearing up to say it, but thanks for including us. This is Easton.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, of course, that we're very close to the Watergate over here in Foggy Bottom, and you mentioned Bob Woodward. I just wanted to know if there's any favorite memory of interacting with Bob Woodward or any interesting fact about Bob Woodward that you would like to share.
His office is it's hard to know what to say about Bob Woodward because he's constantly interviewing people. I mean, he is driven and he's looking for the truth. The good thing about Bob Woodward is that today's journalists do nothing to follow up on stories. What they do is people ask a question, journalists ask a question, they get the standard answer from a politician or somebody else. And even if they look like they're going to ask another question, they ask it again and they get the same answer and they're happy with it. Paula, who's the Meet the Press?
Tim Russer.
Q Society.
We represented Tim Russer. Tim Russer was a lawyer who just happened to end up being a journalist. And Tim on Meet the Press, and kids, you probably don't remember much about his show, but he would ask a question and they would give him a standard answer. He'd ask it again in a different way, get a standard answer, and ask it again in a different way. He drilled down on the same question, if it was the same question for the entire show, until he got an answer. And that's true. That's what Bob Woodward is like.
Yes, but you have to one thing to know for Henry, where for your group there, is that for us in 1973, we lived through this. I had just finished college. Bernie was out of college and he was in a master's program. We hung on every word of that Washington Post. It was what all we ever thought about was looking at what was happening. We had lived through all the protests and everything like that had happened in the 60s. And so this was uncovering corruption. So was very important. So then when we got to represent him, that was very exciting for us because he was one of our heroes. So
yeah, just the standard he set.
Minutes left here. Bernie and Paula, are there any other words of advice you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would. I think what I'd like to suggest for any of those with the fraternity now is when you go home next, and probably be Thanksgiving, go home and ask your parents to sit down, or if your grandparents are still alive, ask them to sit down and keep asking them questions about their successes and their failures and when did you have a hard time? When did you ever have any times in your life where you regretted what you did? What was your philosophy in life? If there's something in your family that is going to be instilled in you as your turning point. I saw my father work. My father was a cab driver, and I saw the difficult time he had working for somebody else. That changed my life. I was lucky enough that Paula read that article, or I may have never thought about that again. Because when Paula read that article, that spurred a moment in my life that said, I'm willing to walk away from this career and take a job where I'm not making any money whatsoever. You want to get to a point in your life when you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and you look back and you say about a parent or a grandparent, I wish I'd asked them more than I asked them.
Yeah.
So you go home, sit them down, and do it. Don't just take my words and forget about them. Go home and do that, because you're going to discover something you about them that you've never known before, and in doing so, you're going to discover something about yourself.
Yeah. Well, Bernie, in my world of nonprofit consulting, we recognize there are two gifts that people can give us: time and money. And as you get older, you recognize that actually time is the more precious of those two gifts, because unlike money, you can never replace time. This has been such a rich hour. We want to thank both Bernie and Paula for sharing so much of their remarkable journey to us. And by your accomplishments, you have brought tremendous pride to George Washington and to Delta Tau Delta. So thank you. Thank you. You have shared the spotlight, and you make Delts and GW grads, and I guess, everybody else who wants to be an overachiever, you give them hope. So thank you. This has been such a rich conversation. I want to thank everybody in our audience. And we're going to continue this series. We do it once a month. And the next one is going to be on Wednesday, October 8th. We call it Fundraising, Friendship, and Fun. The best way to raise money is to make friends and have fun. And by the way, Bernie and Paula are doing a lot of fundraising on Nantucket Island. But again, Bernie, thank you so much for sharing your remarkable journey. And we can't wait for your next book.
And I can't see everybody that's on this because, so Merrill and Tim and anybody else that I haven't seen in such a long time, get in touch with me. I'd love to say hello and, just to see how you're doing, because it's great memories when I think of both of you.
And Bill, thanks for all your kind words.
Bill, yeah,
Great to see you. We missed you.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks for not telling the truth, Bill.
Bernie, do you still have the Bucks?
Pardon me?
Do you still have the white Buck shoes?
No, I gave those up. Don't chase Paula away.
Hey, Henry, and to the undergraduates, thank you so much. From those a little older than you, for carrying on such great distinction, the Delta Tau Delta tradition at George Washington. Our thanks to you. You are the future leadership. So I want to thank everybody for making this a very rich, interactive conversation. Again, to everyone, thank you for being part of our conversation. And we say good evening and be well.